moved over to that new Long Beach Arena, remember?
Yeah.
And you did a demo with Bruce then. No, I think
Oh, that was terrible. Burned in footage if you ever see it.
I'm good. Thank you.
Tea and coffee, any chance?
They got footage of
Joseph. Do you
what?
want tea or coffee? by any
Oh
chance?
no.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah, everything I have, like pictures, I have, I don't really have, and then the pictures I did take with them, you're not allowed to use it because it's property of Inside Kung Fu, it's property of
Oh, right, yeah.
magazine. It's stuff like that.
Yeah.
And even footage that I really like, I can't use it because this photographer took it. Because it's really, it's really, you know, everything is legal.
Yeah.
Even from my own book, they said, because the Bruce Lee estate is really strict on that now. You know, they're really,
They're tightened down a lot.
yeah, I just can't, you know, I can't even use footage that, you know, that, you can only use, what's talking now, 72?
Poppy's what, 5 years older than you, Dad?
71.
71? So I'm 66, yeah, he's 5 years older than me, but James is much older than we were. And that's what we were, James Lee was laughing about. He says, man, my gosh, we were following a child.
Yeah.
Because he was, you know, Bruce Lee was, you know, he was like all of us were at one time. We were very brash. We were, I think, and Bruce was a little bit more cocky than the average martial artist too. And then sometimes he would step on people's toes. That's why a lot of people didn't like him.
Yeah.
You know? I don't think anybody wants to be told that, no matter what system they train under. Their system isn't very good.
Yeah.
It's full of BS or something. And so I think with him, he's kind of impatient to educate people. And in the process, he might have stepped on some people's feet.
And you had a background at the time, you'd been training.
Yeah.
So how'd you hook up with him?
I was under Ed Parker. I had my, you know, I was with Ed Parker, and I was about to learn Ed Parker.
Did you do Shotokan also?
In the service, I had Shotokan friends where we just,
Yeah.
you know, we just sparred with each other back and forth. And Taekwondo people. Just when I was in the military, I was in Fort Campbell, Kentucky. At that time, we were home on the 101st. But we had a lot of transit people, Air Force.
Yeah.
There was a detachment of Marines. There was Navy there for some odd reason. I don't know why. But because it's an Army post. And there was different Army units that are in transit. And then there was a home on the 101st. So we always shared. That's why I always thought it was so funny that when I got out of the service, people were so into their staff.
Yeah.
But, you know, we would have a Korean instructor teach us, and then we'd have an Okinawan instructor teach us. Then we'd have a Japanese instructor. When I say Japanese, not necessarily Japanese, but Japanese system.
Mm-hmm.
So we like to share. We experiment, and we thought nothing of it, you know. But then when I got back to the LA area, everybody was like in the camps.
Yeah.
You're either for this camp or against this camp. I like my group. I had Larry Hartzell, I had Scotty Loring, I had Steve Saunders. You know,
That's a good group.
they're a nice bunch of people. I mean, I haven't kept in touch with Scotty Loring for a long time, but I kept in touch with Larry Hartzell. I see him every week.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Bob Cook, I see him once in a great while, like once a year or something like that. You know.
Yeah.
Scott Loring,
Scott Loring, yeah.
that big guy,
Yeah.
played football in college.
Yeah.
You know, I rated him in '66 as one of our top 5 fighters in America because he gave me the toughest match I had probably ever had. Did you know that? But I heard also that he sparred Mike Stone once down at the Santa Monica School, and he put Stone up beside the wall. You know, it's just a rumor, but it was a pretty substantial rumor. He was a big boy, about 210, 215.
Yeah, and I had yeah, he is. He's good. There's the other one I thought was really good was Bob Cook. He was actually maybe a shade better than Loring. And then there was Larry Hartzell, but they were all good. You know, I want to say that then it gets into writing, and they're still both alive, and then they're going to go, oh, Dan said that, and then I want to try to stay away from that because they were both good.
Mm-hmm. What was it about Bruce that attracted you, or that when you would? A guy who's been training, start working with somebody younger.
I like to think that he was really way ahead of his time. He boxed, which a lot of martial artists, karate people, didn't like boxing.
Mm-hmm.
And because of the background I had in boxing, like even my uncle when he was alive, he'd go, gosh, you're going backwards, keep them feet, but your hands are, he says, come on, Dan, you're not really going to use this stuff, are you?
Yeah.
He says, just keep their feet, but,
Yeah.
go back to the hands and your roots, So I did, that's my Uncle Cecil, he was in New York, but he was, so I just took that with a grain of salt and said, no, Uncle, this is good. And he said, well, what do you guys do? He couldn't understand why we were in our, we call it pajamas, or sleeping clothes. And, we were into reverse punch, and he just sort of looked at it and just sort of shook his head and thought I was going backwards,
That's interesting.
He said, because they didn't kick.
Oh.
And he goes, but the kick just kind of, he says,
How old were you when you started messing with the boxing, roughly?
I had made a promise to my mother at 14 that I would never go into boxing because the Filipinos at that time period went into boxing. There was only two ways of life, because they were a minority group. And usually there was, they call it stevedores, farm workers, military service, and boxing. Those are the 44 occupations open to Filipinos at that time. And my mother had seen a lot of Filipino boxers, get banged up.
Yeah.
And she says, so I promised her at age 14 that I would become a boxer. But I really like boxing. I grew up with it. Both uncles box. They love that. It's a cockfighting and boxing is probably the most two favorite sports of the Filipinos.
How did it come to be that Bruce had you running his Chinatown school? Did you phase into that, or did he just one day ask you?
I told him, he says, you got to really share the art with other people. And he was kind of, didn't want to share at that time because I think he had a bad experience with somebody, I don't remember who.
You told him that you had to share that?
This art should be shared, things should be shared, and you just want to keep it to a closed door. And finally he says, okay, I'm going to let you open up a school. The first group of Bruce Lee trained was like in '65, but they were all females. The YMCA group, that's really my first John Fong Kung Fu group. They, because he said that they would not take the system and run away and change the name.
Where was this? Why? Which one?
YWCA San Pedro, and it was like I think it was like one of those things where it's, I want to say 12-week course, and it was a mixture of Kempo and Jantong Kung Fu. I still have some pictures. I think if I look closely, there was an article on it. So that was like 65. Actually, in essence, that's my first group because he wouldn't allow me to teach. He just was very not stingy. People said stingy, but I think he was more possessive at that time, as everybody was at that time too. It's a different time frame. People thought differently.
Did he talk about the Oakland guys or the Seattle guys?
He
back
talked.
then?
You know what he
Did
told?
he just turn his back on them, or what?
In the Oakland bunch, the Oakland was, with the exception of James, I don't think anybody really trained that long. And then there was the two brothers, not brothers, but Alan Joe and George Lee. They were very close. They were friends of Bruce Lee. But he talked about the Oakland group. The Oakland group is, the footwork was not there. It's more like a modified form of Wing Chun.
Yeah.
It's sort of like the footwork. It wasn't the boxing footwork. And the same thing with Seattle. The transition really came in the LA area. But a lot of people, I don't want to get into politics because people really get upset, But I remember because I used to go down to Oakland quite a bit. See, because I was trained before the Oakland group was formed.
Mm-hmm.
And when I could see the difference. There wasn't a difference. They were sort of like this. To this day, I think you might see some guys that go like that. See, as the motion where he's more like boxing, is more from the LA area. But other people and articles have written otherwise. But I'm not into disputing whether there's a lot of hi Sebastian. That's Joel. Sorry. Okay. There's a
his,
lot of rivalry,
Yeah.
between the groups,
plus his, to me, he seemed like his system was evolving real fast then, and it was hard
By the
not
month.
to be left behind.
Interesting.
by the month.
He would
That's
change
very,
his
yeah.
definition of Jeet Kune Do every month with me. He said, Joe, I got a new definition. Jeet Kune Do is the thusness of the technique. What the heck does that mean?
He was constantly changing. Almost every month the curriculum would change. When I first started him, I learned forms. And about 1.5 months later on, he told me forms are out. He taught me, this is the, started me halfway, that's why I know halfway on a praying mantis form, halfway, all the way on the first form of Silam Tao. So he had me doing forms, and then just threw it out and said, forget that, that's not where it's at. So he says, we're going to do drills that are closely simulate combat. And I think this is it. We're going to hit the heavy bag, we're going to work the top and bottom bag, we're going to work the speed bag, and we're going to work the focus club, which at that time nobody was using the focus clubs.
Interesting that if it was evolving monthly, as you say,
Yeah.
that it's kind of defined by where it froze at the end, which was
Yeah.
clearly not where he had envisioned it based on what you're saying.
Yeah, I think what he was doing was, oh, thanks. I gotta stay up. I'm sorry, guys. I've been working. I had like a 10-hour shift, not a shift, but the teaching. Yeah, I would tend to agree with you on that, because I think you got to really adapt the system personally for yourself, because what works for maybe one person may not work for another person. There is like, I would say, well, I think I'm being honest when I say I can probably use of the material he taught me. I use maybe 40, maybe to 50%. I think the other 50% was not within my reach. Like attack by drawing.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have his timing, I think it's dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
If he's faster than you, it's dangerous.
Yeah.
You expose any portion of your body,
Mm-hmm.
hoping to catch him, and he's faster than you.
Yeah.
Then I think so. I think it's like football. You have to know who you're dealing with, or the method you're using. I don't know if that's
I would agree with you. I always felt JKD was, what he showed me was really predicated on being quick and fast. And I just felt like, Bruce, there's no way the average guy can do some of these moves. Especially that lead hand strike he had, with
Yeah.
the hand moves first, like they do in fencing. That's real hard to teach other people.
very hard.
It's real hard. And you got to have a certain amount of genetic gifts. Did you ever see me fight back in those days?
Yes, I did.
So you had a sense of where I was before I
Yeah.
met Bruce, and
I
and
saw
then
you fight Baines.
then
Saw you
you-
fight Baines. The black kid.
Oh, so you saw me
Yeah.
trying to use JKD, didn't you? I mean, you could see I was twisted up between karate, boxing, and JKD. I'm sure you could see. That's interesting.
That's the first full contact. Like Mike Stone, like the three. I think in that era, I think probably you and Mike Stone were at what I call the epitome of where full contact karate would be.
Mm-hmm.
Norris, it's very interesting, and what I have, and maybe if you wouldn't write this up,
Sure.
but he said that he was talking about Joe, and he was talking about, he says I have a lot of faith in Joe, and I have a lot of faith in Mike, but I'm not quite sure about Chuck Norris,
Mm-hmm.
but he's a very nice guy.
Yeah, that's interesting.
That was a statement I heard,
Mhm.
but I don't know if that's good to be print.
No, we'll get that off the record.
But he felt that Chuck wasn't a fighter.
Did he have comments about Joe?
But he's good for the tag game.
Yeah.
See, my last karate tournament was 1965. I'm going to tell you a story that I thought was so funny. I came back and I had a Charlie horse on the right side and I had a Charlie horse on the left side, and I had my ribs. I got a second place in 1965. It was in Hilton, Salt Lake, City, Western U.S. Karate Championships. That's my last tournament. That was Chuck Norris's first tournament.
Oh.
And that's why I got it. But anyway, I got a second, and I remember showing him the trophy, and he looked at it and he goes, "You know why you got that? Because nobody there could fight." And I thought, well, that was really like, geez, says, and they don't make contact. It's a game of tag. And I said, well, if it's a game of tag, then why do I have a Charlie horse shirt and a Charlie horse shirt and a rib cage shirt?
Yeah.
You know, and but I just thought that was so funny. He looked at the trophies. He says, "That's nothing."
Was that
Uncle Bruce did? Uncle Bruce did?
Yeah, he told me that was nothing. He says, that's nothing. He says, that's just a game of tag. There's no real contact. That's why I thought it was so funny, because I was sitting there with a Charlie horse in both legs, and my ribs really hurt. And he was telling me that was a game of tag. He says, you guys don't hit to the face. This is,
So that doesn't compare to his cha-cha trophy.
Was that Mills Crenshaw's event?
Yeah, that was 65. That's where Bob Cook won the Grand Championship. Mike Stone won the black belt, his black belt, but didn't.
Did Stone get beat by a brown belt that day?
That's my student, Bob Cook.
Oh, that's interesting.
Wow.
Yeah. You got a good memory, yeah. Bob Cook. That's the one I told you is a shade a little bit better than. Also, that is where Steve Saunders got first place in the black belt and the white belt division. We won the team trophy that year.
Wow.
That's the one, but that's the one where I thought was so happy. I was so elated, and he was just like he just said.
So you faded out of tournaments at that time?
Right there, and he told me, he says, "That's not where it's at." He says, and I go, "Okay," but there was no arena. You know, there were some good people there he had, but there was no arena for them to, because it really wasn't taking off the way he thought it would take off. You know, so there was no really arena. Like guys like, he had some good people there, like in the China. We had Daniel Lee, he was a welterweight champion in boxing of China, not Hong Kong, of China. There was Richard Estelio. He was like Hawaiian champion in his weight division, a Golden Glove champion, and he was in the same. He could have gone professional. Everybody still talks about it. And then he had,
Bastilio was so good.
just in boxing, straight boxing.
Yeah.
His kicking is maybe not where it's at, but he could do it straight hands against a kicker. I've seen him do that many times. And then you had guys like Hartzell was pretty good. We may not be most polished, but the first full contact kung fu championships, he really he got a second, but the guy he beat he got disqualified because they were using knees and elbows, and he asked him why can you use it? He said, you can use knees and elbows, but not that viciously. Therefore, we're disqualifying you. See, because it's a different
Not that
era.
viciously.
Yeah, it's a different era. So
You had the wrong intent with that.
but
I
yeah,
got it.
That's funny.
and Bob Bremer was. I think those in that group. And Bob Bremer was just a good timing. But like I said before, there wasn't an arena, and it really didn't start taking off. I think until maybe into the late '70s and into the '80s. That's when you see it really taken off into. Because he used to always, knowing Bruce Lee's personality, he was never really could please him because he demanded a lot of stuff, But his timing was good. I think Joe said, he did things that normal people, like trapping, I have difficulty with it, but he could pull it off. He could pull it off, but a lot of people, I think people can pull it off in drills, but in sparring, you're talking about a low percentage, like 10%, that can really pull it off.
Especially in a real situation.
Yeah, because it's a different response, because everybody responds differently in America. You throw a cross or a jab at a person, depending on his discipline, he will respond differently. Like capoeira people. When I saw Boneco, I never thought too highly of capoeira, because I thought it was just mainly gymnastics. But you see Boneco,
I thought it was dancing.
Oh my gosh, it is usable. But then again, not too many of his people are like Boneco.
Yeah.
You're talking about maybe one or two students they don't have. But I don't know if that's what the information you're talking about.
I got a question on.
Sure.
Could you describe in any words any changes you saw by Bruce's influence work with me? Could you see my style
Yeah.
changing over the years? How would you
Definitely.
put it in the words?
When I first saw you, you were mainly cross behind sidekick, back fist and reverse punch.
Yeah.
And then when you, I think it was at June Ree's tournament. You know, I didn't get to see that, but what I told you, they said you were more aligned on the footwork. That's what I was told. You know, I didn't get to see it. That's June Ree's tournament.
Yeah, I won that 4 times 6-6 through 69. They call that the Nationals back in those days. So, alive would be a sense of just more fluidness, just
Yeah,
more
more
sense of
alive.
rhythm. The footwork was alive, wasn't
alive.
stationary.
As before, when I first saw you at the International, that's in '64. You were usually a sidekick,
Yeah.
back fist, reverse punch. At that time, but 65. I think I don't know if it's 65 or 66. You can tell definitely by the time you fought Baines. What year was Baines?
Baines was 70.
70.
February 1970, February 17th.
Yeah, that's a different Joe Louis than that I saw in '64. It's so funny. I'll tell you a story. I don't know if you know it or not, but I was still stationed at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, because I was in the paratroopers at that time. And I was just like 3 months from being discharged. I don't know who saw you, because we have a lot of transit. But I had never met Bruce Lee yet, and I never met Joe Louis, so I thought it was interesting. Like one guy was saying, the toughest guy he ever saw, the most impressive guy he ever saw was Bruce Lee. And this guy must have been a Marine in Okinawa, because he was on transit or something. I said, well, the toughest guy I ever saw was a guy named Joe Louis. This is Okinawa. I guess he was stationed in Okinawa. When
I was in Okinawa, yeah.
But I just thought, because I didn't know you and I didn't know Bruce Lee at that time period.
He said he had seen Bruce Lee in Okinawa?
No, you saw Bruce Lee in Seattle.
Yeah.
He came to Seattle, Washington.
Wow.
I think Bruce came here in 50, I want to say 58, 59.
You know, I've heard a lot of descriptions of Bruce through the years. That's the first, I think, the word tough.
Yeah, he's tough.
That's interesting.
Because
I've
he
never
got a
heard
temper.
that.
He has a temper. He has a violent temper.
Really?
Violent temper. I don't know if that's good for writing it down, but
Yeah.
he has if you, he didn't like to be touched. You would just go crazy. See, the guy he fought, that he beat in that boxing match in Hong Kong, he is not a stylish boxer.
Mhm.
Like he would not be like a Sugar Ray Leonard.
Mm-hmm.
If I classified him, he would be like a miniature Joe Frazier.
Mm-hmm.
And he would be more like a Roberto Duran, but not the form of Duran. But because he was just kind of a slugger too.
Mhm.
That's funny, because for his size, you would think he'd be a technician.
Yeah.
But when he really got into it, he was like a Joe Frazier. And if you watch him hit the heavy bag, because I've been around boxing, it's not the stylish, polished
Mhm.
guy working on heavy bag. It's just like a guy who's just really upset about something, you know.
Yeah, I've watched those videos, and every shot is a slam.
He's
Not
just,
snap,
he's just
snap,
like
snap,
power,
slam.
power, and that's,
Power,
that's
power.
the way he was. That's not saying that when he played with me, he could be very finesse,
Mm-hmm.
because I was not in his league. You know. But when he really wanted to come to, he knocked me not out, but yeah, sort of dazed now
Mm-hmm.
on my 28th birthday. It was really funny.
There you go.
He says, come on, let's spar. And I go, sure. And he just, usually he plays them, but this one he just sort of went after me. And just knocked the bread basket when I was laying on the ground like this. And he was just laughing. I go, why is he laughing? And he goes, Wayne, bring out the birthday cake. And they brought out this birthday cake. And he sang to me, happy birthday. He says, that's good, because I want to knock you out on your 28th birthday, or 29th birthday. So he just thought that was really funny.
Was it actual free sparring?
He's going, yeah. He liked that. Like I said, I was not in this class.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
I only saw him spar one time down at Chinatown School. He did Shotokan in street clothes against Herb Jackson. Herb was trying to use Jeet Kune Do. That was funny as hell. I'd love to have that on tape.
Oh yeah, he liked that. He liked to imitate Shotokan
Yeah.
and
oh,
score
yeah.
with it.
Mm.
To
Oh,
show
yeah.
him that it was timing,
Mm.
not necessarily the structure. Although, like he said, some structures give better more conducive for a better time.
When did you first meet Bruce? I mean, what was that?
I met him in first international '64, and I was Ed Parker's elimination tournament. That was really a headache. I remember that tournament too because I lost to Chuck Sullivan, which I normally don't lose to Chuck. Although
Wasn't
he's my
Chuck-
instructor.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah,
Wasn't Chuck Ed's first black belt?
Yes. And it was so funny because I was so worried, but he talked to me after that match, and he told me that he says that for that type of game, he says they cannot. If you're really scoring like the jab, like the backhand, it would be good. But for that, he says it's not really good because they're counting the reverse. But that's the thing happened with Sterling Peacock. You know, he's a California champion, Golden Glove, see. And I remember he was crying almost literally because they weren't counting his punch. Because he'd go like this, and he's a boxer, and so he'd go like this, and there wouldn't be any flags, and he got more frustrated as the match went on. Because at that time, if you had a Japanese judge, they wanted you to lock the punch out.
Oh,
So you didn't get any point. So it was a way to cheat on it. You know, some guy used to go like this, and then just rush into the body like that. But there's all kinds of little games that you can play. So I remember Sterling Peacock, he was California's Golden Glove champion, light heavyweight. But he couldn't score because he kept on winging that cross in, but there was no flag on it. And he would look over at the judges, because there wasn't any contact.
That's interesting.
Which is the same, I think it was kind of funny when that Charlie fought guy into the tournament. See, they're not going to count any of that stuff, no matter how close you get. See, that was the judging. Because I think in those days you had to know what the judge wanted. You look over there and see if the judge is Korean. You look over the judge if it's Japanese. You kind of know. You'd have to know, kind of play the game. But in that time period, I think Mike Stone was Joe. I think you guys pretty much dominated the area at that time.
And Stone was slaughtering guys, blooding them up. I would just break the ribs, Bruce had a long-term effect on me. His influence in it, just as he's influenced the entire world. Has he had any long-term influence in your life?
Oh yeah, because I think with him, I always look for better training methods, better drills to make it sport specific for that particular event. I look into other arts, and hopefully I might find something that would enhance my student skills and enhance my skills. So I think the constant growing, that's I think the biggest thing that he gave me. Investigation. And
To be a lifelong student.
right. Like the big thing that Bruce Lee never studied stick fighting. See, I debate that too, because when John Little was saying make little digs, I could see where the digs were at. See, but I say if you say Dan pick up the stick and you pick up the stick and you try to hit me and I hit it, I think that's sparring, and I think that's training with the stick. So when he said he didn't train in the Screamer Collie, I take issue with the way they wrote it in a lot of the books. I don't think that's correct because, whether you say I box or not box, you don a pair of gloves and you go and go 3 rounds with the guy, you're training.
Yeah.
So I don't see the difference in that. Although they said he didn't train it, but he was
It's
very
interesting
curious.
about that, if you think about it, it's contrary to Bruce's philosophy about not labeling things.
Yeah.
And then there is this big push or need by people to label what he did and how it was categorized by today's standards.
Yeah. I think, you see, when you use a Jeet Kune Do, there are so many camps
Yeah.
that it's not even funny. And there's camps to the camps to the camps that rebel against the camps. So you have a renegade JKD, rebel JKD, ultimate JKD,
Original.
original JKD.
The only true.
Neo JKD.
You have all these anti-JKD groups. And then the term JKD concept, it's, people are JKD principles, JKD philosophy, and so you have all these camps. And to me, and I could have a wrong take on it, just like having a private lesson with Michael Jordan for 3 months will not make me Michael Jordan, and that will not ensure me that I will be playing in the NBA. And many people think that, but what he can do, like Michael Jordan, would be inspire you if that was your, and that's why I think that's what I think where he is. He's made it inspirational to seek for it.
What do you think would have happened to the system had he lived?
That would be really interesting because maybe it wouldn't have been as popular.
Well, that's it.
Because see, with the coming of new whole bar fights
Mm-hmm.
and the coming of Valley Tudo, the martial art scene has changed. But then again, I found this too, that sometimes, like I found this with stick fighting, I've trained with like pretty close to 30 stick masters. What they call stick masters. These are the guys who have fought, what they call death matches. There are death matches in the islands. Stick fighting. Some people have died, unfortunately. But studying with one of these masters, I found out does not ensure me that I would get his skill. Because sometimes you can't copy a fighter. And I used to try to do that. I thought, well, I study under this Filipino guy, therefore I will possess his attributes. I will possess his speed. I will possess his intestinal fortitude. But it didn't work that way.
Mm.
But I think every experience you come through gives you it gives you what I call it helps you in the field you're in. Like in martial art, because I played football in high school and college, and I was very, very small. I thought that the physical toughness and the ability to take punishment I learned in football. Because when you get up and you get tackled once and you get tackled twice, if you carry a ball 15 times a game, which I did, and I was very, very small. And people used to really shoot for me because I was small. They were trying to take me out of the game a lot of times. And in high school and in college, that gave toughness. And that's when I think he liked to spar with me, because I could receive the kick. And sometimes when I didn't go down, and sometimes I could see it in his eyes where it sort of upset him that I didn't go down. And the times I did go down, I would get up.
Yeah.
And I think he liked some people. I don't think some of the private lessons he had, they didn't go through that, because I watched them. They were more like techniques, a lot of the group lessons. But on our private lessons, we worked out together. I thought it was so funny because we played music. At that time, it was so criticized. Now I look at all this aerobic boxing and Taibo, and everybody's playing music at that time. Everybody was criticizing what he was doing.
How about that?
So I think he was way ahead in that terms, like playing music.
Yeah.
I didn't like the music he played. Like it was like a lot of it was cha-cha and stuff like that. It fit him, and we would work out the music. And the music would help us when we trained.
They play jazz in some of the boxing gyms now.